Sonic Universe Reboot Issue 61. The brainwashed Shadow threatens Omega with a Chaos Spear, but already we've got forced writing because Omega has the time to say an entire sentence, and Shadow has just been standing there and not instantly attacking him, while Omega has just been letting Shadow stand on him. This is the problem with comic book action scenes that have dialogue. You get no sense that any emotion is going on while they're doing all that talking. I guess Rouge summoned a tornado below herself to attack Shadow, but no, that would have been interesting. So maybe instead of that, it's just a poorly drawn way of illustrating her screw kick in a still image. Where's her Black Wave? She then wastes time calling Omega out on already threatening to kill Shadow. Am I expected to believe Omega is actually his friend? I guess the whole joke and his whole personality is that he's still an evil robot, and just happens to be working for G.U.N. But even Bender is better than this. He says maiming would be involved and he would heal eventually. So he's not talking about actually destroying him. He just says he'd enjoy proving which one of them is stronger. And again, nobody's attacking them to interrupt them, and all the time Omega's saying this in a crowded fight. Rouge says that they're trying to win Shadow over back to their side, and Omega says it'd be better to be honest. Why does he have to say query before every question? And Shadow says win back in confusion. So he lost his memory again. Predictably, he's talked into fighting them immediately, and because Padding, Black Death, who's watching, says that because Shadow's showing considerable resistance to his mind control, this explains why Black Doom couldn't control him. So, Black Death has better brainwashing powers. But then why wasn't he the leader of all the Black Arms at first, and not Black Doom? He was specifically called a lesser mind. Wouldn't Black Doom himself be brainwashable if he's a Black Arms too? And why is he talking to himself? He's just recapping to the audience, but he's not even looking at the screen. He wastes panels, and then Eclipse tells him that the humans are being persistent, but they've almost secured the nuclear device. Andrews had the time to give so many orders, but he didn't notice that Eclipse was still standing somehow, so he gets threatened. I think a soldier is supposed to be aware of what's around him. Black Death inexplicably tells Eclipse to show mercy. And then Eclipse is told that the humans will provide better nourishment for the young if they're eaten alive. Of course, because then they wouldn't be rotting. That's why you can't eat a chicken if it dies of natural causes. It has to be brought to... But still, this bickering between villains got old immediately because it's a cliche and just makes me wonder why this supposedly menacing villain isn't severely punishing him right away. If it's because he's afraid of retribution because he's more powerful than him, then he should have thought things through before making an ultimate life form with free will. Didn't the aliens need Gerald? I can't believe we weren't told about how Eclipse was made without him yet. He tells the aliens to kidnap the soldiers and get the last human out of that mechanical thing. Oh, so that explains why the machine had a bit of a human face. I was suspecting that. I guess the machine's too expensive for all of them to be wearing that. They get taken to the little dark arms where nobody's allowed in here without his supervision. So now he's not being portrayed sympathetically at all. Why'd he ever get portrayed as speaking informally in the first place then, and trying to be nice to Shadow? I don't know how old he is, but if he's been made really recently, the story isn't taking advantage of that enough. It'd be interesting to see a naive villain. Why is Eclipse wasting all this time bragging to the soldiers instead of them being given to the aliens immediately? That wouldn't happen either. He tells the panicking soldier that the bioclay is unbreakable once it hardens, and then the neurotoxin he's been breathing in will keep him paralyzed. The aliens wouldn't need to eat things alive like not even cavemen did if creatures advanced enough for space travel in a comet with breathable air and metallic staircases had ranching. They don't even seem to know how to fish. Come on, even animals know how to get fish. They could have fish farms in their own comet. If these guys could make a comet have air and normal gravity and proper heat, there's no way they haven't invented refrigerators and preservatives. So this dark and edgy plot point is just forced because it's so anachronistic. Again, Eclipse calls Shadow dear brother and wonders how he's doing. So, was I supposed to find him sympathetic or not? Making a bad guy genuinely nice to a hero and trying to put faith in them is the most confusing way to try to make them creepy, because that doesn't sound evil on paper. See, this is exactly why this fight can't be taken seriously. Shadow merely bounces off Rouge's head, while he's a spinning buzzsaw who can move as fast as he wants. Obviously that would have cut her and killed her instantly. Why would a Shadow who's brainwashed to be a soldier for the Black Arms ever hold back? Show me the line where he was told to hold back. Maybe he was told off screen to make sure they'd be alive long enough to be eaten alive, but if you have to assume something happened off screen, and your audience has to think of headcanons to have the story make sense, the writing isn't doing its job. He just immediately killed all of them by spin dashing through them. It's not like that would guarantee their instant death, because he has super speed. So he'd be able to pick up Rouge while she's still alive and instantly bring her to the aliens. Even in Sonic 06, Shadow was fast enough to go through loop-de-loops, even if his ground speed was too slow. And I guess he was also supposed to have a dummied out feature where he went faster the more rings he had, and that's why he was slow. So there's no excuse for not writing Shadow as having super speed too. And if you can't write Rouge being spin dashed in half because it's not kid friendly, and of course that'd be terrible, then the whole situation shouldn't have been written. But the scene could work if we were told that Rouge and Omega have rings, so the ring energy in their aura is keeping them invincible, but not for long, so there could still be tension. How do you write Sonic continuity and never remember rings? Even Sadie M in the original RG Sonic is more like the games than this then, because they had rings as a part of the lore. And this is only like one game. And while using plot elements from just one game is more original than being like classic Sonic, it still doesn't count, and it's not acceptable when it's from a game that hated. Not to mention, wasn't Shadow the Hedgehog kind of ripping off Independence Day and other stuff because it's about alien invasions? So, that game is less original than classic Sonic in general. Shadow teleports away from Omega, who says, teleporting, which is apparently to warn Rouge so that she'll know exactly where to hit Shadow when he teleports somewhere else. There's plenty to say about this. 1, does the flash of light show up before Shadow appears somewhere else? It'd have to be there long enough for Rouge to get there and punch at it. And since when does teleportation ever work like that? Besides, it's light, so it'd move at the speed of light. Also, if Shadow can teleport himself, why doesn't he just teleport their body parts away from their bodies to instantly debilitate them, and then teleport them to the aliens to be eaten alive? He's forced to be an idiot just for plot convenience. Also, Rouge sure is lucky that she didn't try to punch at the wrong time, or else Shadow would have warped in the same physical space as her fist and telefragged himself with her hand. And nobody seems to realize this, somehow. This is the best issue in the arc, but still, it's impossible to respect. Then out of nowhere, Rouge and Omega are told, "Rouge, Omega, a word please." Which is confusing because they're in the middle of a fight with Shadow, and Omega's restraining him, so who could be talking to them right now? Then suddenly we cut to earlier, where we get to see what Abraham Tower was saying to them before. So then why do we see his text box where he was talking to them in the present? That's not how flashbacks are done. Anyways, he says that Shadow's a liability. And I'm guessing that Rouge is going to be all about emotions, while he's going to speak in a logical and pragmatic way. Why in the hell is he still sending Shadow on the mission if he knew he'd be used by the Black Arms? Well, he says that they're using the fact that he's part alien for the mission. Oh yeah, because he could sense where the aliens were before and magically guide the soldiers through the comet. Rouge and Shadow were told to neutralize Shadow if he ever went rogue, because G.U.N can barely keep the world functioning, and the last thing they need is Shadow leading an alien invasion. And the G.U.N commander called Shadow a monster, when the last story in Shadow the Hedgehog, didn't it have him gain respect for Shadow or something? It is more realistic that he'd still be intimidated by Shadow, but it's also more dark. Of course, the gory fan comic writer made things a bit more depressing when they made things deviate from the games. Then the commander says reluctantly that he's made his peace with Shadow and bears him no ill will, and doesn't like sending soldiers to their deaths, and is simply smart enough to acknowledge that he has no choice when it comes to one life versus millions. So he has made peace with Shadow. Well, duh, he hired him. But he's still called Shadow a monster. And he is right now. But it's still pretty confused to have him have a sympathetic moment right after that. And Rouge wastes a panel thinking, what needs to be done? I have a question. What caused Rouge to be attached to Shadow? Why does she care? She's a jewel thief, and being okay with thievery from strangers requires her to be selfish and cynical. Name one time Shadow's been nice to her, or shown her affection, or even acted like an actual friend instead of just a coworker. I can't help but feel like the only reason Rouge arbitrarily cares about Shadow is because she's a girl. Because she's actually more evil than Omega according to the law. Because she's an outright criminal. A thief depriving innocent people of their possessions. Or at least she used to be. I'd hate it if her entire identity was ignored, just like in Sonic X. Why have her love Jules so much and do nothing with it? Rouge tells Omega to not beat a concussion into Shadow, and she tells Shadow that he's too strong and stubborn to let these aliens get into his head. But he did! And it happened instantly! Why isn't the brainwashed Shadow attacking her? Having a character talk their friends out of brainwashing is the cheesiest, most cliche, lazy solution. Even an anti-brainwashing ray would be better, because at least it'd make G.U.N look smart. Again, I have been shown no indication that he sincerely likes Rouge and is emotionally attached to her, other than the one time he compared her to Maria in his thoughts in SC2 and saved her. And even then, that was him being sexist because her being a girl too was the only thing she had in common with Maria at all. If she was a guy, he would have let her blow up. Real great friend there. I'd be embarrassed to write a solution as easy as this. The way I would break a character out of brainwashing was by having an engineer character of the heroes invent a device and then the character would put it on their head that would snap them out of it. Even then, it couldn't be made really quickly. It would have to have been prepared in advance. Wouldn't it be nice if we were told that Tails of Rotor had a pocket dimension where hours inside were seconds outside? That explained why they can make devices too fast. And it worked because it's a sci-fi fantasy universe. Rouge surprisingly wastes another panel, saying redundantly that she figures Shadow's keeping some inner struggle to himself. And she says this is for the sake of everyone back home, and asks if she's gonna have to get sappy and invoke Maria for the 100th time. That's sappy? Excuse me? The writer's using the sappiest way to break a character out of brainwashing, which is especially cheesy because it's coming out of a jewel thief and a team of anti-heroes with no actual love for each other. And he thinks that invoking Maria would be keeping things simple and any writer would instantly jump to is too sappy. Logic would dictate she would get the chance to explain what Maria wanted first, and then Shadow would be broken out of brainwashing. At this point, he shouldn't know who Maria is. We see Shadow hold a Chaos Spear and move it to the right of Rouge. And despite having a text bubble colored like he's still brainwashed, he tells Omega that an alien is controlling him nearby. This wouldn't happen. Hey, you know what would make sense? Well, first off, if some other aliens tried to attack them and all the time that Rouge was blathering on to Shadow, you'd think they would have gotten back from imprisoning the soldiers by now. It'd be hard to buy that literally every single human outside the space shuttle got overpowered by the aliens, in spite of having ray guns. Wouldn't the commander have remembered that these aliens were immune to ray gun blasts if they are, and made the soldiers bring something better? But fine, I guess there weren't any aliens in the room to bother them. Except for the Death's Eye. But you know what would actually make sense? If Omega, with its ever-vigilant watch for enemies as a battle robot, inevitably shot the Death's Eye himself without needing to be told to look for it. Sure, nobody thinks to look up. But he had plenty of time to look all over the room when Rouge was blathering on and on. And the justification for Shadow not attacking her could have been that he was being held still too much to move his arms and legs. Like when Sonic got amnesia, and he was turned against his friends. Omega wants to fight, so he would have been bored while Rouge was talking and instinctively looked all over the room, including looked up at the ceiling. I don't think Flynn ever thought his writing through before he submitted a story. And why did Shadow feel in pain just because the brainwashing was gone? Rouge helps him up, and Shadow doesn't apologize despite seeming regretful, and asks how Rouge trusted him not to kill her, because she's an idiot who's about as reckless as you'd expect a jewel thief to be. She lampshades her being trusting, which fortunately explains her jewel thievery because she's usually not trusting. But again, I don't care that she happened to be in the presence of Shadow a lot, and she naturally lets her guard down then. He was still trying to get her killed here. Shadow warns her that they're in danger of becoming all buddy-buddy like Sonic's freedom fighters. Why would he have a problem with that? Rouge's scene wouldn't be so sappy and cheesy if I had a reason to believe they had a heartwarming mutual friendship, but instead it always felt one-sided. I don't feel like anything's changed since SA2, where Rouge was forcing herself to be happy while snarking that she loves it when Shadow ignores her. There's nothing wrong with showing Shadow as actually caring about his friends instead of being a heartless bore. He's supposed to be the protagonist here. I liked it when he was nice to Kintobor and SDC. Omega says that the target escaped and this needs to be corrected with fire. This never would have happened if Eclipse had stayed there with Shadow. But to be fair, he needed to be there to ensure a victory against the humans. Even if I don't think he needed to be with the soldiers when they were imprisoned. And why would he assume Rouge would be able to talk Shadow out of brainwashing? For a writer that doesn't love SADM, he sure does repeat its problems a lot. And SADM has creativity, so how is it worse than this? There's an unusual attempt at a heartwarming moment from Rouge, who is a jewel thief who tried to steal the Master Emerald. Omega uncharacteristically admits that he finds Shadow inspirational, and these are the only organics he trusts and tolerates, even though he tolerates all the humans around him just fine. The background's lazy. It could be more self-aware and be pink at this point. And Shadow says it's good to have partners. I guess they're all lonely. One, this is so rare for these guys that it comes out of nowhere, even if I guess it's a good thing. But the thing is, they're having this long conversation while humans are getting eaten, or at least slowly paralyzed. There's no indication they're still alive at this point, and why should they be? This is already a darker story than Shadow the Hedgehog was. Shadow immediately proves that he didn't learn a thing, and Rouge has to tell him not to run off on his own and get caught again. Wasn't Shadow supposed to be calculating and manipulative? If he was always this stupid, he wouldn't have immediately made a plan to take advantage of Eggman after Eggman freed him. I can imagine he would have just been like, "Who are you?" and then ran off on his own, thinking he could get the world destroyed himself. Shadow says that he wants to eliminate Black Death and nothing will stop him from his revenge. You mean, from carrying out my revenge? Rouge lampshades that he's been jarringly menacing by saying yikes, and being immediately intimidated into kowtowing to his idea. People ship these two? I thought she'd think up a new plan herself, but he does have good reason to want revenge. Omega says that the tracking signal for his spider troop is weak and finding them will be difficult in this maze. Why does he say concern before that? He was still programmed by a human. Out of nowhere, Shadow says that because Black Death brainwashed him, he's magically gotten a much stronger connection to the hive mind, so he can direct them. I don't think this was necessary. He was already able to direct them. At least this is better than them coincidentally taking the right path to where they need to go out of millions that pass just because they're the good guys. But never mind, it's actually not. A Deus Ex Machina is worse than dumb luck, which actually does happen in the real world. It's not like him being brainwashed permanently changed his biology, so that he's more Black Arms now. They go deeper down, and Shadow tells them where to go, and apparently he's still able to talk to them separate from them. So, is he talking through a headset? Is that blue teardrop in his hand a microphone? The artist should have just drawn them all to have headsets. But even then, you'd think their microphones would have been destroyed in fights by now. And I don't see anything in their ears that could broadcast sound to them. So this is stupid too. He punches a bunch of aliens, and after Omega reaches a Stonehenge ripoff with bright lighting and a comet, they have bright indoor lighting, but this is the only way they can get food. I see a human trapped in alien gunk screaming. And if you saw this out of context, you'd never guess it was for children, let alone for the Sonic series. Imagine if this continued. It'd be like an Adult Swim sci-fi horror. Conveniently, they're all still alive. How much time has passed? Count how long it would take to say all of Team Dark's dialogue after Eclipse brought the humans here. Omega frees them, and Rouge the Jewel Thief somehow cares about Asshole, who says he can almost move again, and then somehow insists that he can walk. Huh? I like that Omega referred to their bomb as a glorious nuclear device. He's told that Eclipse took it. Every time I think about the device, I'm just thinking that this could have easily not been a story arc. Right from the beginning of the issue, I just remember that universe arcs tend to be 4 issues long, and the idea of a 4th issue of this exhausts me. We didn't even need a 2nd issue for that arc. If you're going to have a small arc, I think 3 is a better number. The Rick and Morty comic sticks to that, and even Mecha Madness stuck to 3 issues. Why didn't Andrew say that their leader took it right away instead of just saying he? And why did any of them think of Eclipse as remotely Shadow-like? This would have worked if he looked like Shadow, which would have worked for his character. But somehow they didn't even get the evil twin concept right. He's supposed to look like the person he's based on. Seriously, Eclipse is just an evil twin of Shadow, but more creative because he's not literally from a parallel universe. But he was created basically the same way. So until I learned how he was made differently, that isn't creative either. It'd be more interesting if Eclipse was literally an alternate Shadow, one who was taken by the Black Arms right after he was created. Like, would have made actual sense instead of the Black Arms waiting 50 years to invade for no reason. Another thing that makes Shadow's plot too stupid to deserve being ripped off. He would have invaded his version of Mobius, and then gone to this one for some reason. Shadow warns the heroes about Eclipse. A panel's wasted, the Shadow heading for Black Death and Omega and him heading for the nuke. He doubts they'll prioritize recapturing them. Shadow tells Andrews where to go to return to the shuttle, and tells Rouge where Eclipse is, and that if he has a black oak with him, it has the nuke. So, a black oak is a type of Black Arms? It better look like a tree. It's so confusing having it still have the black part of the name when it's the same species. And Black Oak sounds like a ripoff of Dark Oak from Sonic X. I'm assuming this was the name of an enemy in the Shadow game. But how could it be? Since when were there any oak tree enemies in that game? Black Death tells his warriors to head to the Dark Arms' nursery and move the incubators to a shuttle, and warns Eclipse just now that the humans are no longer captive, and Shadow is free of his control and coming for him. Eclipse reacts with a lot of emotion, and he hopes that the heroes didn't hurt the Dark Arms because they're young, showing a sweet, protective side, just to immediately go dark and edgy by saying he wants to rip the heroes apart. This is the perfect representation of Eclipse. What does the writer want? He's capable of caring about the young like a mother, but he's violent? Well, to be fair, maybe he only cares about them because he'd be his future soldiers and are of his species. Then why did he say, did they hurt the Dark Arms? Instead of, did they destroy my future soldiers? He wouldn't care if they were merely hurt, if they were just a means to an end. Maybe he only shows compassion for other Black Arms because he's racist. But I have to wonder why Omega didn't destroy the Dark Arms. Did he not see them? I guess not, or the heroes would be talking about them. I mean, wouldn't it be obvious the soldiers were put in that place for a reason? What the soldiers have told them, that they were put there to be eaten by the Dark Arms? Why did Eclipse hesitate before agreeing to not let the heroes get the bomb? Why did the Dark Arms not immediately try to eat the soldiers after they were paralyzed? You know, like what happened in the game? Where were they, watching a movie? Wait, what the fucking fuck? The Death's Eye is still around? I thought Omega would have killed it with its blast. It doesn't show any sign of damage. So if it's invincible, how did Omega's blast break Shadow the brainwashing? I assumed it was dead because I have common sense. And common sense is also to not waste panels. It grabs Shadow while telling him off for dooming an alien race to extinction. Normally, this would be evil of someone, but they're all monsters, so... That's the bad lesson the Black Arms being so monstrous is teaching you. I have a question. If the Black Arms are almost extinct, why do they need an entire planet's worth of people to feed themselves, instead of just a small region? And why will they eat all of them at once? Maybe that isn't what could actually happen. After all, the Shadow game had the Black Arms in every level on the planet, and they didn't eat all the humans in all that time. So, if the Black Arms are almost extinct, can I be told how many of them there are? Or is that too much thought and effort? I'm sure if they're almost extinct, they'd only be threatening a tiny part of the planet, even if they came there. The tension of the arc is much smaller than the arc wants you to think, because it's not like the entire planet would be instantly doomed as soon as they'd show up there. In fact, they'd all be outnumbered by billions, so they'd have no possible chance. Every military on the planet could all gang up on them, and they'd inevitably be defeated. Of course, a lot of innocent people will be killed in the crossfire, and that's something to prevent. But my point is, they're being fucking idiots. They can't take over the planet, and they can't get what they want and survive as a species by being hostile. I just remembered that they had a bomb and were planning on using it. But again, why would they blow up their food? That's just going to push them towards extinction even faster. And after they use that bomb, then what? They'll just be motivating humanity to kill all of them faster. Their only possible chance is if they peacefully negotiate. Tell the other species that they just need a steady food supply to survive. They could settle down on Mobius, be given a ranch to themselves, be taught how to take care of ranch animals, and be given food until they can produce their own, and then they'd end up just fine, provided they don't ever war with the other species again, which would get them killed. Instead, these guys just have to get power greedy, and I assume they want to take over the planet because of all the references to invading, and the human commander just assuming they want an invasion, because genocide would probably be darker to say than invasion, but like if they're not planning on ruling with the government and setting out and like making new rules, then that's not really invading in the traditional sense. If there was really a huge amount of black arms, instead of just a couple dozen or however many we've seen on the new comet, then all the references to them being almost extinct would be really melodramatic, and they never say it. Like, oh no, we're almost extinct, we have 1,000 people. Shadow swings the Death's Eye around, right after it just effortlessly grabbed his own arm. Huh? How did it get to this point? Wouldn't it just keep its grip around his arm? It looked threatening there. Wouldn't it make more sense if Shadow used the Chaos Spear against it? Like, cut its arm off? I think if it had a grip on its arm, it should have logically broken it while it had the chance. Now it's lying on the ground. So is it dead yet? It must be damaged if it's not immediately getting back up. So how is that more damaging than... Instead of completely incinerating the Death's Eye while he has the chance, although I guess he assumes it's too injured to escape him and the bomb will take care of that. Shadow breaks past the metal door and Black Death flies upwards. And the story ends with them going towards each other with flaming fists. I'm guessing Shadow will win. Seriously, he wouldn't be able to make sure that the Dark Arms survived the comet if he had destroyed the Death's Eye, would he? This issue is by Ian Flynn, and this was the best issue in the arc, if only because its pacing was faster. But it's still stupid. Shadow was talked out of brainwashing somehow. Like, it makes me feel like the brainwashing was only there for padding to make this entire arc, because it ended so quickly. The human soldiers were somehow all captured at once, regardless of their ray guns, and were somehow not eaten before Rouge could free them. So it's like it's more padding. And despite the risk of being brainwashed again, Shadow goes to Black Death alone. And I have to question why he won't just immediately brainwash him again. I also have to question why he doesn't just use Chaos Control to win the fight instantly, since Eclipse isn't here to stop him. This didn't need to be 4 issues. They could have cut out a lot of wasted panels. This arc is the definition of pointless. It's astounding that it's 4 entire issues that seem to take forever, and there's not a single original idea in the entire thing. How do you do that? This is why the reboot is boring. We've already seen a story where there are black arms and Shadow and his friends spent a while in the Black Comet. You could have had the location be anywhere except the place we've already seen in Shadow the Hedgehog. The new ideas are just old ideas presented as new. The only thing new is that it's a Shadow-like story where the entire thing is in the Black Comet, which isn't even given a unique name. And the entire thing being one location from Shadow the Hedgehog, isn't that much less interesting because there's no variety in the setting? I think even if Sega did make a Shadow the Hedgehog 2, it would be a lot better than this. I don't think even Sega would be stupid enough to have its story be very similar to Shadow the Hedgehog. They would want to do a completely different plot, with different settings. And if we never learn exactly how Eclipse was made, that's going to be a pathetic plot hole in his character, making him forced. Because why would Black Doom have gone to a human like Gerald if he didn't actually need him? This isn't what I wanted. What took them so long to make Eclipse if they could apparently do it without Gerald perfectly fine?